The presentation on the trip to Uganda, and if you did not have opportunity to listen to last week's presentation, it's on the website and it's also on my Facebook page. There's a YouTube video there, and we will follow that with one today. Now, I want to go through a series of slides this morning with you, and then I want to do a teaching on how we can become involved in the need that is there. And so, Bill, if you'll flip up the first slide. Okay, and I mentioned to you last week that in Uganda there's a challenge getting from point A to point B. Let me give you a couple of slides to be able to demonstrate that. Okay, Bill. You might meet cattle in the road. Flip back just a little bit there, Bill. One slide back, please. Can you do that? That's all right. Okay. Now, this is a local taxi. It's loaded down with charcoal. Okay. And how you even get the people up on top of that is one thing. You know, how you keep them on top if they're going flying down the road is okay. Here's the cattle, and you know they're not polled like I raise cattle without horns. When they meet you in the road, you kind of got to give them a little bit of room, and so that is there. Got one guy running this whole herd. Keep coming. Now that's a local taxi. This guy's hauling charcoal. That's what's in the bag. And now you tell me how they get them up there, and how they keep them up there is more than I can imagine. They go down the road just like this is the way it ought to be. Next slide. Now, I told you that this is motorcycle haven. They call them boda-bodas. Now, we are moving in this picture right here. We're not standing still. Everything is moving. And you've got to find a way to get continuing on. Now, you look at that and say, this is a traffic jam. It's not a traffic jam. Everybody is moving. These guys are crossing this way and this way. You've got traffic going. There is no traffic law. Next slide. Now, we've got a lane here. You've got a tractor trailer on the right side of the picture. That lane right there is where our vehicle is moving. And those people need to get out of the way. Now, and they get out of the way. And you have to, if you stop, you're dead meat. You know, you're going to move for hours. And so you got to keep moving, and you're going to pray that there's a parting of the waters. And you only, in Uganda, you only need 1 inch on your right side, 1 inch on your left side for a clearance. I'm sitting on the left side, I'm watching that side view mirror, and people are dodging in and out of it as he's going. Okay? At the school I mentioned to you that I went to, there were 1,000 students there, and I got to preach, and there was probably 35, 50 or more conversions at that service. Okay? Balcony above and below and all in the middle here. They're quite animated in their worship. I had just finished an electrical engineering degree. At the school, I was teaching at the school there that they were at this school. It's a boarding school, and I talked with them about how education is very important. It helps you understand the failures of the past. You know, we don't put leeches on people and bleed them anymore because we found out that kills people. It doesn't make them well. They don't have bad blood, and you find out that there are things that people have developed that you can build upon instead of reinventing the wheel, and the power of education. But yet I challenged with them that you can pursue what education can give you and gain the whole world and lose your soul. And so I was telling my story of how that I just finished my engineering degree when God called me to preach. And there's another story off of that, but I won't go into it now. Okay. Now, church at Lyra. Now, you can see Kampala above the word church is Lira. To the right of the Lira is Mbale. Those are the two major cities and towns we flew into. Entebbe, Kampala is the capital there, and that's where we spent the first 2 nights. So, go ahead, church at Lira. This is just some of the kids. They've got quite a group. Go ahead. This is worship at Lira. Go ahead. This is Pastor Kenneth, the man that I got in touch with through Barbara's Zoom Hebrew class, and he is speaking there at the church before I do. Go ahead. Now they start them out young. These kids, I don't know. You can guess what's the kid on the keyboard? He may be 8 at best, maybe 9. Man, he can play. Pastor Basil's son. And we go to the homes, and when you go into a home, you sing a song, and then you pray always as you begin. And Pastor Basil would start singing a song, and he can't carry a tune in a bucket kind of guy. So, and the kid kept dancing around on the keyboard and trying to get him to get back on the key, and but then he finally get us back. But he's really talented. Now that's the proverbial widow's mite. When you make $1 a day and you try to survive, how do you have something to bring to the church? Make 2, maybe some of them will make $3 a day. Kenneth is a school teacher. He walks to school, gets there at 7. He teaches until 5. He has a 300 caseload of students that he comes home and he grades papers for. If he has a math test or a spelling test or an English test, he's got to grade all that to bring back the next day when he walks there. He makes $200 a month. The government takes the first 50. He goes home with 150. His 2-room apartment, and I'm talking 2 rooms, 10 by 10, 10 by 12 at best, $100. So he's got $50, and he's a school teacher with a college degree. Okay, but that's the widow's mite. This is communion. Fanta orange they use for communion. They use lots of different things, but this is communion as we're sharing there at Lyra. That's on the left is Eunice's wife. This is me teaching. Pastor Basil over in the blue is interpreting for me. Ron, my first presentation, he was very kind. He said about a C- on my ability to coordinate with the interpreter. And Ron had served several tours in Africa in the military, and he was always working with interpreters. So he's trying to coach me on how to do this, whether you say God, and he says God said, no, you can't do it that way. You got to get a thought, a process going and whatever. So I moved up really quickly, though, and I got used to the concept. But I tell you, it's hard when you make a phrase and he says it in some strange language and you say, what did I just say? Okay, where am I going? And, and pretty soon you get to where, it works really smooth. These 2 men that interpreted for me, Pastor Kenneth and Pastor Basil, I told them when I got in country, I wanted to spend an entire day with them so that our spirits get connected and they know my heart. And I said, you don't go word for word, you just go concept to concept. And they were really good at doing that. Okay, now this one is neat. See the two babies. Grandma is there watching the nursery there, and she's sitting on the floor worshiping God. And I thought just a very, very powerful slide. Okay, this is just during the teaching time. This is all the paraphernalia that we were putting together. Soap. When we first got in touch with the ministry there in Uganda, of course they're starving. They don't have much food, and so we sent money over to bulk purchase food that they'd come back to the church and redistribute it in family packs. They were buying 50-pound sacks of flour and rice and beans and those kind of things. And Pastor Kenneth wrote me back and he said, can I please buy soap with this food money? Our people desperately need soap. And I said, well, sure, you can buy soap. And so they bought soap as part of the allocation for food because they just don't have that an opportunity to buy it. So what we did, we went to, I took supplies over there. Barbara's daughter, Risa, did a see one done and now do one and teach one is the concept. I watched her make a batch of soap and went over there and we went through the process of making soap. There was as much interest and involvement in that soap class as the teaching time because they knew that this is an opportunity for me to have soap to wash my clothes, to wash my body, to heal. We encountered one man up on the mountain and he had a big open deep sore on his foot, and he said it started out as a pimple, and so I assume he got bit by a poisonous spider because it just eat it down to the bone. It was about that big around, and it was nasty and dirty. He wouldn't even be able to keep it clean, and so gave him some stuff to clean it with and care for it and that sort of thing. But just being clean is something we don't even think about. Just being able to have soap to be able to do that. So they jumped all over that. This is the agape meal. Now, you're talking about a plate of food. That's something they haven't seen. That kind of bounty. We sent money over, put a budget together and sent money over for them to have communion and then follow with our monthly agape meal. They budgeted for 120 people to attend, and they fed 200 that day. And they cooked it all on open fire with the big pots and put it all together. And of course, you saw in the opening video clip, the military police band was there, and so we had another 30 people that we hadn't expected. But the Lord multiplied, and they even had food left over. But it was and whenever I put that budget together, Kenneth wrote me back and he said, I took out the cakes and soda because that's going to cost too much. He said, most children in Uganda never have a soda or a cake unless there's a wedding, and there's rarely a wedding because nobody can afford to put on a wedding. And I said, well, put them back in. We want to have a celebration. And so they did. This is a family. They don't look like it. The guy doesn't look like the wife doesn't look like she's 20 years old. How many kids are there? My word, but a wonderful, sweet family. Just to give you a picture of family. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids. Okay, go ahead. This is some of the people there at the church. Over here to the right is a fellow by the name of Apollo, like in the book of Acts, the Apollo, and his child he named after me. We were sitting in Kenneth's house, and I said, your name, Apollo, and you're married, yes, you have children. He says, my wife just dropped one. And I said, off the table, or, and he said, 2 months ago. Well, 3 months ago is when I met Kenneth by Zoom, and Apollo was arranging all the Zoom calls and that sort of thing. And in a series of 3 phone calls, he said, I saw you to be a man of God, and I want to name my child after you. And so he calls him Edward. Here's a look inside of some of the homes and the places where they live. This is Kenneth's house. Now, I want you to picture here, Pastor Basil is against the wall, Kenneth's chair is against the wall. That's the living room. That's one of 2 rooms that he has there. And I asked to see the kitchen, and the kitchen is a closet about this size right here. It has a 1-burner eye, and that's her stove. When she prepared a meal for us, she had 8 or 10 pots of things. I think I've got a picture here. She has to swap those out all day long to cook all of those, 1 pot at a time. Okay. Now, There's an older gentleman. Of course, there's not electricity in that adobe style type clay house looking thing. He's one of the oldest people I met. Now, this lady here is blind, and she's pushing 90, which is very rare in the country. Usually 60s, and they die. When she heard that we were coming, she asked. That's her burial gown that they had made for her, and she says, "I want to be in my burial dress for them." And so, sweet lady, she received us there at the home. Yeah. The little child back on my elbow got just really enamored with this white skin. She come over and she was rubbing me and smiling, and it was just a real sweet moment. Now, this is a refugee camp, typical kind of African housing. There have been a lot of refugees that come into Uganda from Kenya, from Democratic Republic, and all around. They flee here to survive, and so the government has a little plot of land there, and they just kind of try to survive. They received us there in the village, and the composition of the soil there is heavily clay, which is good because they can sweep it and pack it down. It gets pretty hard, and except during monsoon, and it's a quagmire. But they swept everything clean and they go around to their neighbors and collect chairs from each. One home may have one chair, and they brought them all there so we could sit. And so it was a real special treat. Now, typical water drainage ditch there, which they'll scoop water out if they don't have anything else. This is some of the folks there in the village. Now, it's hard to see back in here, but this little girl here looks to be maybe 2. And what's her toy? It's a hoe. That's what she's playing with. She's got a hoe, and she's digging right there at the base of that bamboo plant. So that's all she's ever seen is that kind of thing. She don't have a doll. She doesn't have any kind of toy. She's got that hoe, and she's out there by herself, just digging away. This next section of slides I've entitled "Surviving." In the country we have a phrase that it says, "You eat what you raise, and you raise what you eat." That's where these people live. Well, these slides will be able to give you that indication. Now, Charles, what do you think of that corn crop? Kind of lean, isn't it? Yeah, the ears of corn are about like this, and Charles was about like that, But that's their corn crop, and I'll talk more about that. Okay. Now, I'm walking on a path between I don't know what to call them, home sites, and you see on my right, that's beans. Now, you talk about using every square inch. They're planting beans in the edge of the path because they've got to use every square inch they've got. Because up on the mountain in Mbale, the land there is just passed down generation to generation. And you have several kids, and you keep dividing it out. And so eventually, sometimes they may have as little as a quarter of an acre. Most half an acre. But most of the time, just a quarter of an acre. You've got a house, and you've got this, and you've got to survive on that quarter of an acre. It's like having that front yard out there, and that's it. You're going to survive on it. The blessing for them is they live on the equator, and they have 3 growing seasons. So they can 3 times a year they get a crop coming in. But I'll talk more about that. But here is this lady's drawing water. You can see between her 5-gallon buckets there's a pipe coming out of the ground. You think, oh wow, that's great. That's city water. It's city water, but as our pastor said, stand still long enough and watch the water, and you can see something moving in it. And so it's better than the drainage ditch. It isn't good. I left some life straws, those things. I left some of those there for them to try to ward off some of this. But that's what you're dealing with. This is the kitchen. When the first time I passed by, the guy was, he's whittling on a mango or something. Looks like there, but he was sitting there. There's a big iron pot right here, and that's an open pit. And he was sitting there as we went down with a bamboo stick stirring some peas. And that's the kitchen. Now, Peter would have a heart attack in Uganda. That's the cattle operation, Mel, right there. This guy, he doesn't own these cattle. He's get paid to feed those cattle for 2 or 3 months, put some weight on them, and then he'll take them on to sell. Now, they stay in those 2 stalls 24/7. And they chop up bamboo stalks and dump them in that trough. And cattle weren't made to eat bamboo stalks. They don't have the teeth for it. They're not hogs. And yet then he'll go down the road, and along the sides of the road, he'll take a sickle and he'll cut a big armload of grass, and he'll bring it back up the mountain. He'll dump it in there for those cows. And that's his job. He's getting paid to feed those cattle that belong to somebody else. Now, there's the local laundromat. Whatever you wash out, you just lay on the bushes. And of course, the banana there is a dominant crop. Here is one of the poorest sections in all the country. They got $1 million view. Some American's going to rush in there, and he's going to see this view, and he's going to buy up all this land for nickels and dimes, and he's going to sell it as a resort. I mean, this is $1 million view from the top of that mountain looking down into the city of Bali. This is just to give you an idea of walking from one house to the other. You always attract a bunch of kids no matter where you are and moving about.
Wherever. We have come.
We thank you for the time we can see you face to face. We heard about you and wanted to come. We thank you for your welcome and honoring us today.